Welcome to SVL Free News and Views for Wednesday, October the 24th. I'm down here at Fourth Creek Cemetery. I'll be telling you a little bit why I'm down here. First of all, thank our sponsors, Mitchell College, Randy Marion, Piedmont Healthcare, Blue Harbor Bank, Fastville's Key to Escape, the Escape Room, and Statesville Family YMCA, and Crossroads Cycling. Okay, coming up this weekend is the second weekend of the Haunted Statesville Ghost Tours, and over my shoulder in the corner is the tomb of the unknown Confederate soldier who came here after the war. He died, and nobody could identify who he was, and this is one of the stops we do here at the Fourth Creek Burial Ground. So get your tickets at downtownstatesvillenc.org for Friday night and Saturday night. I'm leading a tour on Friday night, so I hope you'll come out and pick any of the times and have a great time, learn some history about downtown Statesville. This is actually part 2 of our show. Today we did an earlier show where we're interviewing candidates running for the District 22A judge seat for Alexander and Iredell counties. In the first episode, we had Kerry Parker and Daryl Davidson. In this episode, we're going to have Brantley Oswalt, Carol Hicks, and Rob Young. So Mike Furman sat down with all three to give you an opportunity to hear what they have to say about why they wanted to run for this seat. So let's take a listen.
I'm here today with Brantley Oswalt, who's a candidate for District Court Judge in the 22nd District in Iredell and Alexander counties. Brantley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Sure. We have a few questions for you today, but first I thought we'd just give you the opportunity to make an opening statement, introduce yourself to voters.
Great. My name is Brantley Oswalt. I'm an Iredell County native. I was born and raised in Troutman, North Carolina. I live there now with my wife and 3 daughters and 1 grandson. I was graduated from South Iredell High School in 1987. Was in the military for a little bit after that in the United States Coast Guard. Moved back, started a career in law enforcement. But I've been here and practicing law in Statesville for 10 years or 16 years. I was a law enforcement officer for about 10 years before that, so about 16 years in the system.
Okay. Now, there are some Republican candidates and a Democrat and an independent in this race.
Right.
Which is interesting for a judicial race, I think. Could you tell the voters how your party affiliation may or may not be reflected in your judicial philosophy if you're elected?
Well, I think as far as my judicial philosophy, there are Republicans and Democrats and certainly independent running in the race, but my view on being a judge is when you take the bench, you have to be fair and impartial. In other words, whatever your personal views are, your political views are, when you put on a black robe and you take the bench, all that stuff has to be set aside. Everyone who comes in front of you has to be treated fairly, and you have to take the law and you have to apply it to the facts as they are presented, and you have to apply that law as it's written. That's why we have a legislature. That's why the legislature passes laws. Our people elect their legislature. It's not up to judges to come back and look at laws and determine what they think is right or wrong or what they think, how it should be written. Basically, it's how the legislature has set it forth based on other precedents and other cases. So I think you look at those things and you just apply the law to the facts and you try to come up with a fair ruling. Okay.
Now, what unique experiences and education do you bring to the bench that you think would make you an effective judge?
I think one thing that sets me apart from the other candidates is my law enforcement experience. As I said, I had about 10 years experience as a law enforcement officer in this county, so I'm familiar with a lot of the issues that that brings about and a lot of things that are dealt with on that side of the table. I think it sort of gives me a unique perspective from both sides of the table because I've done, both sides. Cases that wind up in court, a lot of times they start with a call to the police department or a call to the sheriff's office. And that's a whole different set of facts and a whole different emotional level that people deal with. So I've been in victims' homes, I've stood with them when they've had problems, and I just think that gives me a little different perspective on the system as well. Past that, I've been practicing for 16 years. I've practiced in every single area of district court. Everything the district court judge would hear or do, I've heard those cases, I've presented those cases, I've been involved with them. So that's about 26 years of total experience within the system here in Iredell County, and I just think that adds a lot to it.
Okay. Now, what are your views on diversion programs like drug courts and other programs that give low-level, nonviolent offenders, the opportunity to have their charges dismissed?
We have some of those already within the statutes and within the system. for drug offenses, for example, if it's a low-level drug offense, if someone hasn't been convicted of a drug offense before, it's called a 9096. That's just a section in the statute that allows the court to give that person typically 6 months to either get some counseling or be on probation or do things that the court feels that they need to do to make sure that there's not an issue with drug abuse and that they can not have that affect their life going forward. So we do that already. There's been some discussion of like drug courts. The state has tried that before. I think funding for that ended in 2011. You can go back and look at those statistics. They're all online, and it just seems to me that those courts didn't really work, and they weren't really. They were long-term programs, and it just didn't fit the needs, and it didn't. For the money that the taxpayers were spending, it just wasn't appropriate. So there are things we can do. There's community services. There's a lot of things within the community, different places where people can get treatment and things like that would probably be more effective.
Okay, thank you. So just to wrap things up, if you could had a few minutes to tell voters why you think you're the best candidate in this race, this would be a good opportunity to do that.
Well, I've been practicing, like I said, for 16 years. I've been around on both sides of the table. There's a lot of things I think that we can do to improve our system here, and that's really the reason that I've decided to come out of private practice and run for this seat. We have days now where there's 600 cases on the docket sometimes. The community has grown, and the court system has just not kept up with, I think, with the population and the amount of cases that we're covering. Our district actually is one judge short of what it was supposed to be 10 years ago. So the judges we have, they're working with a lot of cases on a short staff already. So there's things that we need to do to deal with that, and I just think my experience will allow me to add to that conversation and be a part of it.
Okay, well thank you, and
thank you.
Good luck in the election.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. I'm here today with Carol Hicks, who's a candidate for judge in the 22nd District, which serves Iredell and Alexander counties. It's an open seat, and we have 5 candidates running. And Carol, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's give you the opportunity to start with an opening statement, and then to introduce yourself to voters, and then we'll go into a few questions.
Okay. The only thing I would like to say is that, of course, my name is Carol Hicks. This is my second run for the same seat. The judge that has it now is retiring, so the field has become a little more crowded than the last time. I ran 4 years ago. At that time, it was a nonpartisan election. They've changed that. I'm sure you covered that a little bit. So we have lots of candidates and no primary. So I really appreciate the opportunity to have a chance to tell you a little bit about myself. I have been practicing law for 27 years. I was a little late coming to the table because it took me about 10 years to get enough money and go to college and do what I needed to do. I didn't go straight high school, college, law school. So I was 35 when I graduated, came back to my newly adopted home when I was 13. We moved to North Carolina, so this is home now. And I've been doing for 27 years everything that the district court judges hear. I practice in those courts. I do child custody, child support, misdemeanors. I do major felonies also, but district court judges don't hear those. They hear low-level felonies. So I feel like I am incredibly qualified. I believe the voters need to get out and know their judicial candidates, because we affect your lives, whether you think you're going to ever have to have a district court judge or come before us. You'd be surprised how many people you know that we touch the lives of. And I say we, hoping that I will be the judge. I'm not now, obviously. So my practice also involves myself and one other attorney have the juvenile contract to do all the juvenile delinquent cases for any child at this point at 16, under 16, that gets charged with a crime. So I am very well versed in the courts that a judge hears. I believe you have to be fair and impartial. I believe you have to hear the cases, don't legislate from the bench. You rule within the law that as it stands. And it's a little bit about the philosophy, and I'm going to let you ask me some questions, but that's really all I need people to know, is that I feel like my qualifications and my practice makes me qualified for it, and I ask for your vote.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Some people will be surprised when they see on the ballot the party affiliation next to the candidates' names. Just thought I would ask, how does your party affiliation reflected in your judicial philosophy, or is that something voters should even consider?
It might be well, I'll say it like this. I do not believe your party affiliation should have anything to do with you sitting on that bench, because, and you'll hear a lot of the other candidates say the same thing. When I was 18, my grandma took me to register, and she asked me at that time, you know, I said, "Grandma, what am I?" And back then in the dark ages, it was Republican or Democrat. She said, "You're a Republican." And I have always never changed my party affiliation. I do believe, though, that everybody needs to vote their conscience. I believe that a judicial race needs to be nonpartisan, because you don't hear cases that are just your party coming in. You don't hear cases that are just the same race as you. You hear everybody, and you have got to rule fairly. So there are personal things that I believe in, but I don't think it has any part in the judicial race.
Okay, thank you. Now, you talked a little bit about your educational background. Yes. Can you tell us what unique experiences you've had that make you qualified for the bench? Things, life experience, anything that you think would serve you well?
Well, in high school, I worked through high school, and at that point I started bussing tables, waiting tables, whatever. So most of my life ahead of that was in restaurants. I was either restaurant manager, bus girl, waitress, whatever, server, excuse me, these days, whatever it was. So I know what it's like. I got my 4 years from going the last 2 to the Gold program, which is Gardner-Webb's program that they had. You work full-time during the day, go at night. I was afforded a lot of opportunities. I know what it's like to work hard. I know what it's like to not have something given to you. And just my practice, too many times we have judges that will be straight DAs, then to the bar, you know, to the bench. Then we have people that don't have experience. Then we have people that practice in the courts. So I just feel like it's been a well-rounded practice. I certainly have life experience. Know what it's like to work hard, and know what it means to, you have to look at it not from the perspective of just the people, but you have to look at it from the perspective, I mean, not just the other lawyers and clerks and things. You have to look at it from the perspective of the people that are sitting in front of you. Not everybody's going to be able to afford certain things and different things, and I think that you have to take that into consideration when you're making your judgments. So,
okay,
I think it helps.
Now, what is your view on diversion programs like drug court and other programs that are designed to, you know, prevent first-time offenders from having a criminal record and give them a second chance, maybe?
When you say drug court, that has a very specific connotation. Drug court is something that is approved by the legislator. We hear that around. There's some people tossing that around, and the promise is being made to create one. You can't just create a drug court. A drug court, there has to be funding there, and it's not up to the judge to do it. I can tell you that I believe a program like that, which is hopefully we will have the funds if it ever comes. That's a lot of work for the people involved. That's a 2-year program, and I would be very much in favor if we had the funding to give them that opportunity. What we have now are called deferred prosecutions, and we have a 9096, which refers to the statute that allows first-time drug offenders to enter into a contract with the state. And it's usually a year of probation, go get substance abuse. So it's similar to a drug court, but it's not a drug court.
Okay.
I think those things are incredibly beneficial. I have had lots of clients enter into them, but it all depends on the individual. Some will blow their chance by getting into more charges and different things. Some will take full advantage of it. And it also, if you're over 16, it leaves the door open for you to be able to expunge your record, which means nobody will ever have to know. And we are just now, December 2019, we were the last state to finally raise our juvenile age to 18. So I say that I'm not trying to take up too much time, but I say that because right now, if you are 16, 17, 18, you will have a criminal record for the rest of your life if you get charged with a crime. So those programs especially, I think, are beneficial for young people that can just make a mistake. But I've even had 40-year-olds get in trouble for the first time and say, oh my God, I've never had a problem. So I'm absolutely in favor of those.
Okay. And finally, maybe just tell the voters why you're the best candidate in this race.
I think that being a judge, and if you had seen any of the things where we've all interacted, a few of us are really close friends. So, you know, I don't ever want to say I'm better than him because I feel like I'm qualified. Obviously, I proved I wanted it 4 years ago. I felt like I needed experience before you run and take the bench. I've got 4 more years towards that. I think my personality, I know what it's like. I've never prosecuted, but I do know what it's like to be on this side of it. And I just think that, I know that I'm fair-minded. I've seen too many times where different things influence how a judge has ruled. And I believe that I will be fair-minded and just look at everybody as an individual. And I know the law, and I know those courts, and I've been in those courts, and I think that gives me a unique experience to be the best candidate.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and good luck in the election.
I appreciate that a lot.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. I'm here today with Rob Young, who's a candidate for District Court Judge in District 22, which covers Iredell County and Alexander County. Rob, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I've got a few questions for you today about your candidacy, but I'd like to give you a few minutes at the beginning just to kind of make an opening statement and introduce yourself to voters.
Okay. I'm Rob Young. I'm one of the Republican candidates for District Court Judge in District 22A. I have been in practice for 23 years. I moved to Statesville in 1999 after practicing 5 years in Buncombe County. When I was right out of law school, I decided that I was going to go out on my own. I did set up my own solo practice and ran that successfully for 5 years. We handled all sorts of different cases in both state and federal court. In '99, I decided, because of the large number of cases that I was taking in the juvenile area, to look for more of a career in that area, and I did in fact become the attorney for Iredell County Department of Social Services. I had that job for about 5 years. And then in 2004, I moved my practice, so to speak, to Alexander County. I'm doing the same thing, Alexander County Department of Social Services attorney. In both of the Iredell County situation as well as the Alexander County, I handle cases involving abused and neglected children, abused and exploited adults, and I collect support from persons who have to pay a child support obligation. I live in Troutman. I have been married for 26 years to my wife Kim. I have 2 children, Henry and Sarah, and we have found a home here in Iredell County. We love the locale. We are intent on staying, but I also can say that I'm deeply attached to the people of Alexander County, having gotten to know them for 14 years. The reason I've come into this race, the reason I decided it was important to run, it really comes down to 2 things. The 2 issues for me are this. One, we have a significant drug problem both in Alexander and in Iredell County. That drug problem has continued to get worse over the years, and yet our response in this county, as well as in Alexander County, has not been commensurate in the court system. I believe we need a drug court where we can provide judicial supervision over drug treatment. It's not enough to just send persons out and get that short-term treatment that so often comes with the court system these days. We need something that works, and I think a drug court, just like many counties have, is an effective way to go. The other issue that's been pretty much an issue for me has been the backlog number of cases that we have in this county. Right now we have approximately 900 domestic cases that are 731 days or more in age. So what that means on a practical level is that there are children in child custody cases that haven't had permanents in 2 or 3 years. I think that's something we can address through scheduling orders, and I also think we can do it through common sense reforms and get these cases moving and get these kids permanents.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to a few questions. You mentioned you're running as a Republican. A lot of people think that judicial races should be nonpartisan, but it is what it is. Can you explain how your party affiliation would be reflected in your judicial philosophy, if at all?
Okay. I've been a Republican since 1986, and that's basically since I cast my first vote. I believe that it informs my judicial philosophy, and my judicial philosophy is one of judicial restraint, and one which seeks to get at the original interpretation. I don't believe we should be judicially active, going out creating laws out of whole cloth. That's the job of the legislature. It's not the job of a judge. The job of a judge is to interpret, and to that extent, to the extent that I have conservative philosophical leanings, that's what basically informs my my overall approach to being a judge and the way judges should work. I think that it's important for the parties to be involved in these elections, and the basic reason for that is the parties are one of the best sources of information about the candidates. A lot of times people just simply don't know who the judicial candidates are. I've been to over 1,030 houses in this county, and almost every one of them told me the same thing. I don't know who the judicial candidates are. Parties do a very good job of trying to get that information out, and I think that's worth keeping these elections partisan. Okay.
Now, you talked briefly about your experience as a lawyer, and particularly your work in family court. Is there anything that you'd like to add about your professional experiences, maybe in the other types of cases that you would see in district court, that would help our viewers kind of understand your background?
Well, my background, I think, has up until this point equipped me to perform the role of a district court judge. I have an extensive appellate experience. One of the things I did as a private solo attorney was handled a number of appellate cases, both in front of the North Carolina Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. I've argued in front of both of those tribunals. I have, as a result of that, a pretty significant knowledge of the way judges are supposed to enter their orders, and unfortunately, the way that they're not supposed to be, because occasionally we get an adverse result on the appellate end of things, and it's helped me significantly to understand that. Aside from that, I've been the author of two legal treatises in North Carolina. One in North Carolina, one's a national treatise. The first publication is North Carolina Juvenile Code Practice and Procedure. That's been in publication since 2003. It's the leading publication in the state in the area of juvenile law. I think I'm very versed in that area and can handle those cases in a way that sets me above the other candidates. The other publication that I've worked on more recently is a national publication called Legal Rights of Children. And in that particular case, we cover the whole aspect of the legal procedures, legal substantive and procedural aspects of the law as it affects children. Everything from tort law to Social Security, disability law on down. These books are updated regularly. I have to stay on top of the law to do that, and I think that's given me yet another edge over the other candidates, to the extent that I constantly have to know what the law is in a given situation in a wide variety of circumstances.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned, excuse me, earlier about the need for a drug court, and there's some other diversion programs out there, and I know the Statesville Police Department and other people are working on the new Leeds diversion program. What are your thoughts on those in general, and in specifically, how do they help the individuals, and how do they help the court system?
Well, I think the Leeds program is one of many tools that can be utilized to help an epidemic in both Alexander and Iredell County. Leeds program is one that's in this county, in Iredell County. It helps to reduce the number of cases where we have low-level offenders with not significant legal issues, no significant legal issues. It helps them get past the criminality and move on to treatment. I think that's a positive first step. The problem is that there's a lot of barriers in that particular program to getting into that program, and it's not as widely available as I would like. Certainly it's great for those who are eligible for it, but I think it needs to be wider in terms of scope, and to that extent, that's why I advocate a drug court. Drug courts are in many counties. They take cases from many different classifications of district court cases: criminal cases, civil cases, juvenile delinquency cases. A whole host of different cases can have a referral made to this court. The other nice thing about it is that they have a strong supervisory component. When you've got a juvenile court, or a district court judge breathing down your neck every 2 weeks, and that's how often the judge has hearings, every 2 weeks, you're going to tend to comply. And the statistics on these things, although we don't have really great current statistics, the statistics that have been compiled by the states show a significant amount of compliance. We're talking about 1 out of about every 2 individuals that go in these drug courts is successful in completing it. Compare that to what I deal with in my juvenile courtroom, where we have probably 1 out of 50 successfully complete drug treatment. I think it's worthwhile to go down that route, because I think that we've got to do something. We've got to cut that demand for the supply of drugs that's in this area. But more significantly, these individuals, at least the individuals who want to be off drugs, we have to remember that they are somebody's brother, sister, cousin, aunt. And it's getting to the point where being a drug addict is a lethal enterprise. If you get the wrong batch of drugs, if you get a batch of drugs that's been cut with fentanyl, you're dead. You don't get a second chance at it. So we're literally going, if we go down this route, I have a very high expectation we're going to be saving some lives and also minimizing the impact to collateral individuals. We've had so many circumstances where other individuals were affected by drug abuse. More recently in Alexander County, we've had individuals who were passed out behind the wheel on heroin while their infant children were in the back seat. Somebody's going to get killed, and I think we have to do something now. I think a drug court is the most appropriate response. I'm not saying get rid of these other efforts, because they are complementary. They're all tools in the same tool chest. But working these tools in concert, I think, can help us tackle this drug problem, save lives, and I think ultimately will improve our counties, both Alexander and Iredell.
All right, thank you. And finally, just to sum up, last chance to pitch to voters why you're the best candidate in this race.
I think there's several reasons why I think I'm the best candidate, and it really comes down to a couple areas. The first area is that I have broad legal experience. I'm the only candidate that's both been in private practice as well as in the public sphere. I'm well versed in both areas and can practice in both areas. Second, I have my academic credentials. I have been out there working in the academic area of the law, looking at the statutes, interpreting the statutes, and it's not been without fruit. I've been cited by several law journals as well as the North Carolina Court of Appeals for the work that I have done in terms of citation in support of a decision. I also have been significantly involved in the communities both in Iredell and Alexander County. I have been committed to this county. I've been a Crosby Scholar senior advisor. I'm on the board of directors for Crosby Scholars. I believe in that program, and I believe it's going to make a significant impact, and I want to continue to work in that area. I'm a Boy Scout Scoutmaster for Troop 348, and have been in the scouting program since my youngest was in middle school. And I, again, am committed to that program. I attend Broad Street United Methodist Church. I'm active in the community in that respect. And overall, I think with regard to my involvement in Alexander County, even though I don't live there, I've served on various boards, served in various capacities to try to make life better in that community. So in overall, I think these things, broad experience, legal scholarship, and community involvement, I think I have a significant package to offer the voters, and I think is one that would be hard to overlook, and I hope it's one that the voters will consider strongly, and hopefully I'll get their vote.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Good luck in the election.
Thank you very much.
So there you have it, all the folks running for the District 22 judgeship. So get out today and vote. You can vote early up until November the 3rd here in Iredell County at the Board of Elections. But after that, you'll have to go to your polling place or precinct that you vote in. So if you haven't done it yet, go to SVLFreeNews.com and sign up for your email edition, which comes out every morning at 5 a.m. to keep up with the latest going on here in Statesville and Iredell County. So stay tuned, and on Friday I'll be running some interviews with the candidates for the Iredell County Commissioner's race. So have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.